Hey y'all, welcome back to Made It Out. Today's guest is Icon FLETCHER. We are talking about the discourse that's been online for the last couple of weeks surrounding her album release. We talk about the questions, the concerns, the comments that have been swirling around. I just want to remind everybody that Made It Out is a place where we try to create a safe space for everybody to share their stories and experiences. So I just want everybody to listen with an open heart and be kind. Okay. Hi.
Hi.
It's nice to have you here.
It's nice to be here.
I know we have a lot to talk about today, but I kind of want to start just with the beginning of your journey. You had this rise to fame when you came out with the sex tapes. It was with a previous relationship, a woman that you were dating who was a public figure in the lesbian community. And then you kind of became a pillar in the lesbian community. You were selling out shows, performing at Dinah. You're a big part of the TikTok discourse. I just want to talk about your journey as an artist and what it was like to be embraced by the queer community.
Yeah. Well, it's like such a deep question, and I feel like goes so far back to like the beginning of my career, honestly. I started writing music. Well, I think even before that, I grew up in a small town in New Jersey, and I knew that I was queer from a really young age. I was in love with one of my childhood best friends, and I was like trying to understand what that meant and understand my feelings. And I kissed a girl for the first time in 8th grade, and I was like, this is the coolest thing in the world. Like, this is amazing. She was in my French class, and we would work on a French project every Wednesday. And we were like absolutely working on a French project every Wednesday. And I had a sweet, sweet boyfriend in high school. And then I had kind of always like tucked that aside though. Like these feelings that I was having, these experiences that I was like, wow, this feels so amazing. And like, there's so much more here for me to explore. And then I went to college. I went to NYU. Once I moved to New York City, it was really the place that I was able to like explore that and explore my sexuality. And I met a girl and fell absolutely head over heels in love and went through quite a journey with coming out to my family. It was really challenging. And I also had always been somebody who had like put my feelings and my emotions into my music and into art. And I went down to Nashville and I wrote and recorded my first ever EP down there. It was called the Finding Fletcher EP. And that was about my falling in love for the first time with a girl. And yeah, that's when everything started with my music career.
And did you expect to be embraced by the queer community the way you were?
When I started releasing music, which is actually so crazy, my 10-year anniversary of releasing music is today, 10 years ago. Yeah, which is so wild and makes me so emotional because it's just been such a journey. But when I started making music, in terms of representation, there was really only Haley Kiyoko and Tegan and Sarah. And I just remember feeling like I needed to be the artist that I needed when I was younger. Like I needed to see me represented. I needed to see my love story. I needed to see what it looked like. And the song that really started my career was a song called Wasted Youth, which was prior to the sex tapes. It was like featured me falling in love with that same partner. And that was my first time coming out. And I was so terrified and so scared and was just receiving so much commentary around people just being like, you know, what if you alienate, you know, a certain audience from listening to your music? And what if your career doesn't take off because you share something like this?
Was that from your team or was that from your peers?
It was just concerned like family and friends who were just wanted to protect me and who hadn't had time to sort of process like my queer journey yet up until this point. And they just, they wanted to protect, but I just had this knowing and this feeling that I'm like, I have to share this. I have to know that I will still be loved no matter who I love. And it just took me on the most incredible journey, and I was so received and I was so held, and to feel so embraced by a community was life-changing and life-saving, really, because I, growing up, not really understanding where I fit or where I belong, and to just be so embraced by a community, by people, by like-minded humans, who just had this openness and this curiosity to life and wanting to learn more about themselves, and to just feel, community was really, really life-changing for me. And I think that I've always been somebody that's identified as queer, and there's so much nuance in that. And it's sort of this like larger umbrella term. There's like room to breathe and grow in it. And I think this combination of all of my romantic relationships over the last 10 years have been with women. There's like a few songs that I have with boy pronouns in them, like male pronouns in them. But those were not the center of my focus, because that was not the center of the experience. Like, that wasn't reflective of like my loves, like my greatest loves and like what was moving my heart. And so that's what I've always written about. And so I think we've entered like this era where there's so much more focus on like branding and marketing, and there's this liminal space of queer, and then there's like this, the word lesbian, which that can show up in a million different presentations, but we understand what that means. Mm-hmm. And just, the combination of like my music being about my loves and my relationships and about women, and this like era of TikTok, I felt like over the years, and I would reach out to, like, people would write articles and they would say, like lesbian artist Fletcher. And I would reach out and I would say, hey, could you change this? I'm queer. Mm. And so I feel like there's a combination of sort of all of these things of like branding, marketing, algorithms, TikTok, mm-hmm. of course, my music. And that it started to feel like Fletcher's a lesbian.
Right.
Yeah. So I think the being embraced by the lesbian community and the queer community in general is just like, it's been my life has been a queer experience. So it's been magical, but there's definitely been some like nuance and challenge with it along the way, which I think is like really showing up in my current experience right now.
Yeah, but it sounds like you anticipated some of this in that time, or had fears about something like this in that time, being branded so heavily as something, knowing that you weren't necessarily that.
The idea of branding and marketing in a brand is something I've always like deeply struggled with and had a complicated relationship with. And when artists start making music, it's like for the soul, right? Like, music is the most epic expression of just like your essence and who you are, right? And then the word industry is like the capitalism of that, the money making of that. Like, those are two things that inherently don't really go together. Mm-hmm. And I sort of started like, I played sports in high school. I had my black belt in karate.
Wow.
I was varsity volleyball captain, and I had Fletcher was on the back of my like jerseys and like varsity jackets and stuff. And so Fletcher was like a game face, like it was a competition, this like competition that I would, step onto the field with or onto the court with. It later became my artist name. And I've always had this like rage and angst and like bitterness and so many feelings. And Fletcher was a way, for me to like channel all of that energy into music, into going on a stage. But then there was also these parts of me that were so tender and so soft and so introverted and really shy and so fucking anxious. But yet I would be able to step on stage and somehow, even if I was terrified, like be able to do it anyway. And so over the course of my career, people really attached to And the songs that would perform would be like Undrunk and Bitter and Becky's So Hot. And they were these like angsty, you know, messy, chaotic, like rageful songs. And then the songs like For Carrie, which is on my album Girl of My Dreams, or Healing, or a song called Antidote that's, you know, on my last album. Like those songs wouldn't resonate the same way and they wouldn't react. Yeah, I started to really struggle with feeling like there were only certain parts of me that were desired and were wanted. And, you know, and so I'm like, it's either this tequila chugging, tit signing rock star, or this like barefoot in the woods, like soft spiritual girly. And so it was something, and I had newly just signed a record deal. And so I really internalized this thought, you know, that it's like all of me couldn't exist, like all of me couldn't be at the table. Then Becky So Hot is this song that like skyrockets me into this level of TikTok virality, and I'm getting to perform the song with Miley Cyrus on a stage. And there was just sort of these like series of things that happened. I get invited to go on the L Word, and I am reading the script, and you know, the line is just like, oh, it's the kind of sapphic chaos that I live for. And so I remember having this moment of just being like, this is what I feel like I'm known for. Like, this is the box that I'm in. And I don't know where these other softer, more tender parts of me like fit and where they go in all of this. And so my art started to feel like strategy. And I remember I was touring so much. I was like touring so much in 2022. I played over like 115 shows that year. And then I was touring and playing shows at the beginning of 2023. And then my body started to just shut down. I got vocal cord paralysis, and like my left vocal cord just stopped working. My body was just like screaming at me. And then I later found out that I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, and that I had Lyme disease. And it was really then in that time that I paused and I was just like, what is going on? Like, what am I doing? Do I want to return to this industry, to this like machine, to this like lore that feels like it somehow became bigger than who I am as a person, that I feel so swallowed up by? My girlfriend that I was with at the time was like really helping me process like a lot of these feelings and a lot of these different emotions. And I was also, you know, I needed a moment, and I didn't really have a moment. I was like treating Lyme disease, and then I was writing In Search of the Antidote at the same time, because I'm also, you know, I'm like contracted to write a certain amount of albums.
Right.
So it's like very strange.
It happens so fast.
It happens.
I think.
Yeah, it happens so quickly. And that relationship of mine ends, and then I meet this guy, and it rocked my world. I just remember having so many feelings of like, not only am I experiencing this like disconnect from my music and from the chaos from the past, now you add on top of it this experience that I'm having where I am just like, you know, where does this fit into my life and into the stories that I have been writing, into my experience that I've had over the last 10 years. I just couldn't help but think, you know, would you still love me if you really knew how I felt about my artistry and the music industry and that, like, who I loved right now. And so I had to take a break, and that was the silence that I was in from the beginning of this year.
Where did you go?
I just had to leave town. In the fall of last year, I started seeing all these TikToks and these rumors and thousands of comments around, you know, me dating a guy and how people would feel if they found out that was true. You know, how they wouldn't listen to my music, how they would feel betrayed. And so I wrote my most recent song that just came out, Boy, knowing what the response would be, knowing what the reaction would be. And I just needed to grieve the version of me that people expected, and the version of me that people wanted.
Do you feel like that part of you had completely left?
No, it was just that I felt for so long that I was swallowed up by simply like this one aspect of me that became the whole brand, right? Of just this like, of chaos. And these other aspects and these other components of just softness and tenderness and emotion and the parts of me that like weren't wild and weren't aching and weren't, you know, like I didn't feel like for so long I had felt like those didn't have the space. They like weren't the songs that people would even respond to, you know? So it's not like I was making this up in my head and just being like, I'm like being shown numbers that like, oh, this is what people want.
Yeah.
This is what they want. And not in terms of my queerness. Like and I think it was hard too, because after my first public relationship, which we weren't even public about it. We were public like once we broke up.
Right.
I didn't share any of my relationships that I was in after that. Yeah, I think it was like they were experiencing my queerness through the lens of my music and through the lens of my art.
Right.
But not like seeing me in real life, like kissing my girlfriends, you know?
Mm-hmm. Did you grow any resentment toward that part of you, or?
I started to hate the fact that this safe space that I had spent the last few years of my life traveling around the world to create for other people didn't have space for my own experience. That's on me. That's not on anybody. But so complicated to navigate. I just had to like disappear out of survival to just figure out how I wanted to share this story. And it's like one I am still kind of figuring out how to tell.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the need to validate that because I think any platformed person, things do just kind of happen and you're like riding that wave and you're like, oh my God, this is so fun. And then you don't really know, but you don't really know. Like, I'm building an entire image. Yeah. And sometimes even in my life, that freaks me out because I'm like, as we were saying before, like, we contain multitudes.
Totally, we contain
multitudes. And I don't want to
multitudes.
just be seen as this like mom figure that sits on this couch and is this like mom to the queer community or to queer women because I also am messy and chaotic and there's like this whole other side of me and so I just want you to know
Gemini,
that I
right? Aren't you a Gemini? I'm a Gemini moon, so I understand.
Exactly. And so I think sometimes I even get stuck in that. And at the beginning of this, when it started happening, I was like, but I don't want to not show the fact that I do drugs and I drink and I party and
she has a whole wine bar over there.
Yes, I do.
There's wine, there's whiskey. I came in and she was like, what you need? I was like, a lot. I need a lot.
Exactly. So it is like at the same time that things are happening and people want you to be this certain person, you still want to be who you are and be seen for that. So
yeah, just for all of it, for all of me, like the feminine, the masculine, like the hard, the soft, and all of it's true, even all of the components and the songs that everybody like gravitated towards, like those are true. I just felt like it became the only thing that I was defined by. And I think even with this album, of just like my cover is like I'm out in grass, like I'm touching grass. And I just am like, I'm going to swing so hard the other direction to give space for those parts of me that also deserve to be seen and to be loved, mostly by me.
Yeah.
Like really just by me.
Was being into men a new discovery for you, or is this something that you've always kind of known?
Over the years, I have physically been with a couple guys, gender nonconforming people, girls, like a variety of people in a variety of bodies. However, all of my romantic relationships and partners were women. And so my songs, there's a couple songs that have male pronouns in them and other pronouns in them, but 98% of my music is in reference to, the women who moved my heart. And yeah, I've always written about my relationships and my love stories. And so when I met a guy that I started feeling romantic and emotional feelings for, I was just like, what the fuck? Like, that's what really surprised me. And that was the part that I was just like, wanted to be able to contextualize and understand what that meant for my journey, and understand what that would mean for the way people would perceive me. And ultimately really just what I wanted to share.
What did that work look like to be able to accept that part, or this like newfound part of you, I guess?
Yeah, I think just like allowing myself to have life experiences. Like, I've always been somebody who, even when I discovered my queerness and I couldn't wrap my head around it and was so scared of coming out and sharing things with my family and what that meant for my life, I still always gave myself the permission to have the experience and allow it to shape me. And so I just was like, okay, this like looks different from the love that I've been in over the last decade and over the last 10 years, but it's love, and I've always been attracted to people who have feminine energy, and not feminine in a gendered way, but in a way of like being connected to your heart and to their feelings and to their emotions and their sensitivities. And majority of the time that has shown up as women.
Right.
But for me, it's always it's been about energy. It's been about the person. And so when this person showed up and I was just like, oh, fuck, like this, I think I could love you. And just allowing myself to have that experience, allowing myself to have love, I think is the whole point of life.
Yeah. You decided to announce the album with the song Boy. Mm-hmm. Can we talk about the intent behind the song? And then we'll talk about the discourse.
Yeah, of course. I have a song on my album called Hi Everyone Leave Please. And I was originally supposed to release Hi Everyone Leave Please on May 23rd. But I didn't think releasing a song called Hi Everyone Leave Please after being gone for 6 months in Pride Month would land. However, Boy didn't really either. So here we are. But that song really speaks to the context of the album at large, which is about my relationship with my artistry and with the music industry, and gives a lot more context as to what the body of work is at large. Mm-hmm. And so I think, with Boy coming first, there isn't that context about sort of a bigger story here, because it's, the song is really, it's about how I am perceived by people and the nuance of my queer experience and the fear that I was having. And it is absolutely not scary to like be out in the world, with a guy and talking about a heteronormative relationship. But it felt scary for me in my world and sharing it with my audience and my community. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, the intent of Boy was not to center a relationship with a man, but to center the journey that I've had in my queer experience, and given my, history and how people have experienced me. Yeah.
I feel like that is a valid fear. I think that I will admit that there is a lot of, in your case, queer phobia in the lesbian community. That is a real thing, and it's a valid concern. Mm. And so I think that is very real. But some of the lyrics in the song maybe could come across as vilifying the queer community. And, on a broader scale, people listening to the song thinking, oh yeah, they they aren't going to accept you, you know, we'll accept you. So I want to know what you have to say to that.
Yeah, I think I wrote the song from the perspective of I had already seen what people said. I already, like, I read thousands of comments, you know, of how people would feel if they knew I was dating a guy. And like that fucked me up.
Yeah.
And so I did have fear. And there was a lot of commentary around, like, you know, why aren't you saying this with your whole chest? You know, why aren't you more proud with this? And because I was scared.
Yeah.
And I take me out of it, right? Like, people can hate the way that I went about it. You can hate the song, feel any type of way about it. Everybody's so entitled to their feelings, to their opinions. Like, it's all valid. Like, you are not wrong. Like, any person who has experienced something from it or felt a type of way, you are not incorrect. Take me out of it, right? I find it so interesting that I have gotten like thousands and thousands of messages from people being like, I feel seen by this. I resonate with the feeling of feeling scared to share something, scared to bring something to my community. And that says something to me. I don't know what that means. And I think that there is clearly like a larger conversation going on that I think this song is like raising and like bringing about, and it's all valid. But there is a lyric in the song that it's like, maybe I've changed or maybe it's just him, you know? And I really want to clarify, it's not a commentary on like sexuality changing or like it being a phase. Sexuality is not a phase. Like, queerness is not a phase. And that lyric was just for me like, oh, what does this mean for my queer journey? Like, does this mean I could love boys beyond this boy? Like, does this mean I could, you know, or is it like, did I just fall for the energy of this one person, you know? But sexuality is not a phase. The last thing that I want is like any of my fans' parents, you know, to be like, look, your queer icon, you know, found a boyfriend now. Like, maybe that'll happen for you too.
Right.
But when people share with you who they are and tell you who they are, like, love them, believe them. Like, sexuality is not a phase. And, you know, this idea of just like lesbians just haven't found the right man. Like, how about like men are not right for lesbians?
Right.
Yeah, there's just been so many things that I like really have wanted to like clear up and clarify. And I also understand how everybody has perceived and experienced the song.
Yeah. Was there a moment of pause ever before releasing Boy first?
Yeah, I was shitting my pants. I went through so many things. I'm just like, do I wait 4 years until like Trump's out of office? Like, this is not the climate that we are in right now and the world that we are in right now. And I'm like, do I only come back if I'm ever maybe just dating a woman again and then people want to hear from me? And I cycled through like so many different emotions around the release of this song. But I ultimately, and even with it not being the song that I originally intended to have come out first, it's also not something that I wanted to hide. Like, I didn't want to hide this song in the context of an album because then
you
people
won't win there either.
Like, there's no way, any way in time, if like, however this song was released, whether it was first or second or like buried somewhere in the album, I didn't want people to feel lied to, or like I marketed an entire album campaign to then just like drop this song Boy. I just am like, I might as well, I've already seen thousands of TikToks and thousands of comments about this, like address this elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so of course there was like pause. However, if I had to get to the place, I'm like, if I've always expressed that people deserve to just show up as they are and who they are, and that's okay, and like they can be loved through any season of their life, then I have to walk that walk.
It seems as though the rumors had been swirling for a really long time. So why wait until Pride Month to release? Because it seems like maybe that is more of a marketing strategy than just coming out when you're ready to come out.
Yeah. I got off tour last year and I had a couple ideas for some songs on the album. Like I knew a few things that I wanted to say and that I wanted to write. And then I mostly wrote the album in the fall and into the beginning of this year. I just turned my album into my label in April. And I feel like Pride Month has always been a time where I have been historically celebrated, where I have shared about my journey as a queer person and my feelings and my stories. And it was a story that I really wanted to share with my community. However, I understand that it didn't quite land that way for some people. Yeah.
I think something else that's been talked about a lot is kind of the rebrand into this softer, aesthetic and era, I guess, and how that coincides with being with a guy.
Yeah.
And just the optics of that.
Yeah.
And how it can kind of look, especially in this political climate where we are seeing this massive shift to the right, it can kind of look like, being with this guy has made you this softer person and put you in this era of healing. So I want to give you a moment to kind of speak on that.
Into that. Just given my past and my history and what I have experienced with my feelings and the nuance of the music industry and feeling like I had only been associated with this chaos for so long. And that was not about my relationships. Like being queer is not chaotic. It was the era of my life that I was like expressing this energy. But my relationships with women were like the softest, most magical and beautiful. Like being queer is like the most magical thing on the planet. And my relationships, given all of them had, their own sort of like journeys to it, but like being queer is so epic and so beautiful. And so whether I was with a girlfriend right now or a boyfriend right now, or I was single right now, giving space for this, like these softer sides of me that just want to be seen and want to be loved by me and know that they are like beautiful to be there. Like a man does not have me in a field collecting flowers. Like I'm not soft for a man. I am not healed by a man. I am not changed by a man. No matter who I was with, at this point in my life is just this is where I would be.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also part of growing up.
Yeah. I'm 31.
Yeah. I feel like even after coming out and in the last few years, like the way I presented myself online, which was also just like, I will never forget the first TikTok I think you commented on was this, oh my God, awful TikTok of me with my old boobs. I had huge implants and I was like coming through the,
yeah.
Yes.
I remember that.
Yes.
I followed you online for a long time.
And so now I look back at these parts and I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe that was me. Especially now doing what I do, I'm just like, oh God, but you do have to embrace every part of your story.
Totally. Yeah. I like look back on these things, on these moments and I just am like, ooh, who was that? I always say, I literally am just like, ooh, girl, you know, you like don't recognize yourself. But also I just am like, okay, that was a part of the journey. Like, gotta love her too. But like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so many people can resonate with those. And this conversation of like, we all don't like who we were in our 20s,
Totally.
but like that's who got us here.
But I think the thing is that's being connected to that's being connected to my queerness right now, where people think I'm leaving my queerness behind, that's like a piece that I'm not proud of, that I am shedding or was toxic to me. You know, it's like, no, just me, whatever body part is in my mouth, like it doesn't matter. Like that was how I was behaving, not because of who I was dating or my queerness. It's just like par for the course of being in your 20s.
Yes.
Yeah, and also queer doesn't have an aesthetic. Queer doesn't have an aesthetic. It doesn't need to look a specific way. It doesn't need to have a specific brand. There's like all kinds of queers all over the world, you know?
Yeah.
And this is just the way that I want to express myself right now, that is like entirely separate from whoever is the partner in my life.
Mm-hmm. So why delete all the Instagram posts?
I have always, before I enter a new chapter of music in my life, I always wipe my Instagram. And just to signify that there's like a new chapter starting. And my 10-year anniversary of releasing music is today. And so my plan was to like bring back my entire feed, you know, like everything from the last, it's all been I never deleted a single thing. It's all just archived. To bring back like the whole journey, you know, like 10 years of Fletcher. I didn't get to that moment. No. But
maybe you can now.
I know, maybe I still can. If you guys want it. You guys want my feedback. And so I have always wiped my Instagram. However, given the context and the content of this song, and not having like a song leading up to it to have like, there's pieces of the story that are missing that I take accountability for.
Yeah.
And I think given and I love my fans so much, and for them to feel like blindsided, you know, and feel like this vibe switch real quick, you know, it feels jarring. And it's like, I've been living this experience for what I've been experiencing, you know, with like my brand and like my, you know, all of these things for a long time, but like they haven't been on that journey with me, you know, like people don't know that like, yeah, I've been in some like the deepest depression of my entire life through the highest highs of my career. I literally am like, I don't even have words to say how the lows that I, you know, and anyway, I think that it deserved some more context. Yeah, just the Instagram wipe. It is not an erasure of my sapphic identity as Fletcher or who I've been. I'm like so fucking proud of my journey, like so proud of my journey. And I love every version of me that I've been.
A big criticism of the song is that it is almost like a coming out song. It's like almost this inverse version of coming out and doesn't necessarily recognize the experience of what it is like to come out and the discrimination and the fear and, you know, of actually losing your whole world around you. And so I want to give you a chance to just address that.
Yeah. It is not scary to share with the world at large about a straight passing heteronormative relationship. Like, given the world that we are in right now, the political climate, like that is not something outwardly to the world that is scary to share. However, sharing that in the context of my world was really scary, you know, like sharing this with like hundreds of thousands of like sapphic, incredible fans and people around the world was just something that I needed to figure out how to do. And so the coming out experience as a queer person is like absolutely its own, I lived it, you know, its own journey, but I was cycling through feelings of fear and guilt and shame, not because of him or what that looks like to the world, but what it looked like in my world and what it meant for how people would experience me and what that meant. People forget, I think, that it's just like, it's my first time living, you know? It's my first time living too. And I just am, all of us, I think we're trying to understand and to learn and to grow and to just become more of like ourselves.
It's hard to have a platform that's built on something that's so fluid. A fixed platform on something that is so fluid.
Yeah.
you are monetizing this piece of you that you don't know what it will be in the future. And all the nuances stripped out of that, because everybody wants to hold on to what you mean for them or what you are in their eyes. So I just think that's important context to put out there, and for people to understand that everybody is just trying to exist and learn and grow and evolve. And we should celebrate people growing and evolving and make space for that and let there be room for that. But unfortunately, I think, you know, with the internet and just how things are just memeified.
Totally. Yeah. Like, everything's a meme these days. We're all memes.
Exactly. And you strip everything of its context and nuance, and now you're just a character. Yeah. And so I get that. And I think it's important to address.
Yeah. Just the monetization, you know, of life. I've seen a lot of comments about just like profiting, you know, off of like, people have, you know, I've seen things of just like, what about Meet Her at the Bar, or what about like Fletcher and Friends? And it's just, you know, these experiences of just like artists monetize off of their life, you know, like every artist that we love does. And then there's also these elements of like Meet Her at the Bar, for example, was an initiative I started to raise money for GLAAD's Rapid Response Initiative. And I didn't make any money for that. It was just for the Lesbian Bar Project to save queer women-owned bars around the country after the pandemic that were having a hard time staying open. And so everything that was sold there, like merch and all the things, were just to go directly to the bars. And my festival, like Fletcher and Friends, you know, was a space that I created to uplift to give visibility to other young queer artists. Also bring pride to my hometown is where I started the festival, you know, bring pride to my hometown and where I needed those spaces when I was younger. And so what a full circle moment to be able to bring that back to my place. And I've seen comments around like, why haven't you done anything for Pride this year? And I think that that's a really fair question. And it is not because I'm not identifying with my queerness anymore. It's not because I don't want to celebrate Pride. It's because I didn't want to monetize in any way off of anyone in the community without them having context for where I was at in my life right now. I can only imagine how much more intense and worse it would probably be if I was hosting Pride events or hosting things. I've just been writing about my life for the last 10 years. And it's what I just am doing now. And I think I definitely feel differently about sharing so much, about my like sex and love and relationships. And, you know, this album is like not about a man. It is really just an entire record of my relationship to my career. And so I've seen a lot of comments of people being like, girl, can I pre-order the album or is it going to be all about a man? And I'm like, you're safe. Just this one.
We ripped that Band-Aid.
Rip the Band-Aid off. You're in the clear. Don't worry. There's nothing else.
Do you want to address some of the conspiracy theories, I guess, that are
so many
swirling?
Conspiracy theories? I would like to address some... Yes, a couple conspiracy
Maybe
theories.
Misconceptions is a better way to say that.
Some misconceptions. That I am a Trump supporter, that I am in a cult, that I am a trad wife, that I'm brainwashed, that I've been brainwashed, that I went to conversion therapy. Conversion therapy, that's a big one. Yeah. That I went to conversion therapy.
That's what you were doing in Northern California.
That's what I'm doing. Also, I don't live in Northern California. I just am outside of LA.
A bit north, which to me
just
is
like a little
not Northern
north.
California.
Yeah, that's like north. It's not actually, but people are like, she's in some field and it means this. And I'm like, guys, I just had to leave. I just had to leave LA. I had to leave WeHo and I had to just go. I had to go to a place where nobody knew who I was. Where my lore did not precede me, and like where I And I got to fall in love with somebody who like deeply, deeply respects my queerness and my journey, but was also like learning me for me, like who I was in this moment. That, yeah, I just am like, I'm just trying to be me right now.
How do you think this could have gone better? How are you taking this and kind of taking responsibility and thinking about this or reflecting on this?
Yeah. I stand by my art. I stand by my music. I stand by my story. However, I understand that, you know, this has been like, it's received like a lot of feedback. It's received a lot of feedback. I'm sorry to my fans and to the people who felt so blindsided. I think that there could have been let people more into my world, you know, but I also I didn't really know how. And I'm still kind of figuring that out.
And I think two things can exist at the same time.
Two things can be true.
Yes.
I have a song called that.
And I think there's a lot of power in the fact that you came right to the place that you knew that your community was going to be. And I hope that people will open their hearts to this conversation. And I really appreciate you being here and trying to take the accountability. And I think it says a lot. And I want you to share the intent and the message that you hope that the community will take away from the album.
My intention with this entire album is to give people the permission slip to evolve. I don't just mean that in like a sense of queerness. I mean that as like the biggest picture of who you are, whether it is a job or it is a relationship or it is a place that you live, or if things don't fill your cup anymore, to just give people permission to bring all of themselves to the table. The question of the album is ultimately, you know, it starts out with like, would people still love me if they really knew how I felt about all of these things, if they really knew who I loved right now, if they really knew what my experience is. But the album ends on like, would I still love me if I really allowed all of these parts of myself to exist, if I gave voice and gave truth to all of these aspects? And so for people to just have a permission slip to be who they are.
Let's end on a fun note. Okay. We play a game every episode.
Okay.
So you're not getting out of that.
I'm scared.
It's called You Haul or You Ghost.
Okay. Oh God.
And it's if you're out there dating and they're perfect in every single way, except for they have this one like little quirk.
Okay.
Is it a you haul or a you ghost?
Okay.
Okay. They post I did a thing after they get a haircut or like buy a
Ghost.
car.
You
Same.
ghost.
I fucking hate this.
We're gone. You ghost. We are ghosted. It's not.
Did you ever do that?
Did I? I honestly may have done this myself. So I also ghost myself. Yeah.
Very like early 2000s.
I did a thing.
I did a thing.
I also changed my hair color before every era too. Like that's a thing. I'm definitely have captioned something that maybe when I bring back my whole archive of my feed, we'll check if I have an I did a thing in there.
Yes. I'll be scrolling.
Yeah, you'll be looking for it.
Okay. They haha their own text messages.
I don't hate that.
I love this.
I think that's funny. Somebody's like making fun of themselves and being like, especially if you don't react, you know, to their text and they're just like, hello, haha.
Oh my God, it's like 10 minutes
funny.
later.
Yeah, like that's funny.
Yeah.
U-Haul.
U-Haul, yeah. They take their shoes off at the movie theater.
I do that.
Me too.
I also sleep with socks on, which I know is a serial killer move.
Oh, hate that.
I feel like we might have to cut that from the edit.
Thank y'all for listening to today's episode. As always, help us spread the gay agenda by writing an Apple review, rating us on Spotify, and sharing with everyone you've ever met. And if you haven't yet, join our subscription community, Made It In, for exclusive Made It Out Media shows, content, and chat rooms at madeitout.supercast.com. Made It Out is produced by Matilde Jordan and worked on solely by lesbians.